Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network. I'm here in Standing Rock in North Dakota, the site of the fight against the Dakota Access Pipeline. This is Derrick Broze with Activist Post and the Conscious Resistance Network.
We're placing you under arrest. The city of Houston does not welcome you here at all.
Please don't run over me. Please don't run over me.
We got a war criminal right here.
Derrick Broze, we're at Anarchapulco 2018. This is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance and Activist Post. I'm here in Houston, Texas.
What the fuck?
What's the reasoning?
We've been fighting a long time, and we have all lost so very much, so many loved ones gone. But you are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea. You have no idea. How important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance Network, and today we are going to be talking about the growing police states, totalitarian states in our sister lands, if you will, of Australia and New Zealand. And really, my heart truly goes out to my brothers and sisters out there, because I definitely know a lot of activists in different parts of Australia and a few people in New Zealand who are awake to the tyranny that's happening and haven't bought into the programming and can see what's wrong with what's going on in those two nations. We're about to cover some disturbing information, disturbing stories. Really, my heart goes out to the people there who are dealing with that, and I hope that everybody can come together and start to form freedom cells, circles, whatever you call it, and start to find ways to band together. Because as some of you know, I actually released a book earlier this year, back in January. It was called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, and it was before COVID-19, but it is proving very, very timely and extremely important if you're looking for solutions, because in there I talk about the importance of community and freedom cells and opting out, and how the only way we're going to survive what's coming, especially now because the technocracy is being pushed even further with COVID-19, is to opt out of these systems so that we're not dependent on them, to build new systems and co-create new systems, and to come together in communities. And I definitely don't think the cities are going to be a safe place to stay in the coming decade or so. So shout out to everybody who's watching from Australia or New Zealand, and let me know, guys, in the comments if I get any of the following stories wrong, or if you have further information you'd like to add to the info today. But before we get any further, I want to remind you guys to bookmark my website, which is theconsciousresistance.com. You guys know the drill, theconsciousresistance.com. I've been broadcasting and running my news through this website since 2013. You can find out more about our history if you go to the About page. You can check out all of my books, which are downloadable for free, especially if you want to know more about my personal thoughts, my philosophy, and the solutions. I don't necessarily put this in every single YouTube video, but that's where you want to go dig into, and you can download them all for free. You can also check out all of our documentaries and watch them for free, or purchase them if you want to own them yourself. We got lots of podcasts on here. We got a place where you can listen to conscious music or submit conscious music, and we're going to be doing more of that. And you can also find us on Float, on Minds, on Hive. You can join my text list, which I highly recommend, because that means you would just get a text message about a moment before I started, letting you know I'm going live right now. You can also sign up for our Telegram channel, the Conscious Resistance Telegram channel, as well as my Derrick Broze Daily News Telegram channel. If you want to support, do so via Patreon or crypto if you like. All right, guys, so let's get into it. What we're going to do now is just let me see, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think 6 stories, 7 stories. Most of the stories I have are related to Australia, but there's similar horrific things going on in New Zealand. But it does look like I've got about 12 or 13 stories, and the majority of them are about Australia. But again, if you have more information, then please do bring that to the table. Please go ahead and comment, and I'll try to get those comments on the screen so everybody can take a look at it. And wherever you're watching from, we're live right now on 4 Facebook pages, on YouTube, and on Float, float.app, flote.app. Please give us thumbs up, hearts, share this out right now if you can. This is really vital, important information that we're about to share, so that people like myself who are living in the United States, or living on the North American continent, or in the European Union, understand what's happening to our other brothers and sisters in Australia and New Zealand. Because if you follow this channel, you also know that we have Johan, who's our contributor from Anarchy for Freedom India. He has his own website and his own channel. His videos have recently gone viral across India. So we have brothers and sisters all across the world who are really pushing back on this narrative. And it's important that we support each other. So that's why I'm taking the time to talk about it, and shout out to all the awesome Aussies and the Kiwis as well. All right, let's get into these stories now. These are going to be just kind of disturbing as we go through them. it's just going to get probably a little bit more disturbing each time. So let's go ahead and just dive right in, I guess, huh? Twitter, I found this one on Twitter. Should people in lockdown in Australia be made to wear a tracking bracelet? Now this, I'm just going to play the video. The music, it's just music in the background, so it doesn't really matter if you guys hear it. Just read what they're showing on the screen. Should you have to wear this bracelet to stop the spread of COVID-19? It shows it Safe Korea. Singapore has introduced this new tracking bracelet. And that's what it's for, to travel. This is what I'm saying. If you want to travel using their systems, you're going to have to comply in some way. So if you're not staying in a quarantine facility, you got to wear this bracelet. And if you tamper with it, the authorities will be notified. Hong Kong, South Korea. So now they're talking about, should we bring these things to Australia? And they go over some of the situations. One of the ways of getting people to care is by imposing financial penalties, but also thinking about what could be some more stringent measures. And electronic monitoring is certainly an option. So just kind of a sample of what's being considered in Australia and floated by the mainstream news over there. But let's actually look at what the politicians are saying. Prime Minister Scott Morrison to make coronavirus vaccine as mandatory as possible. Now, I believe he has since tried to walk back his statements. This was just a couple of days ago on Wednesday. But whether he walked them back because people are pushing back or not is irrelevant. The point is this guy thought it was okay in the middle of, I mean, to me, I think we really need to call this out. The fact that, for example, USA Today can write an opinion piece and publish it in the mainstream news, proposing the idea that it's patriotic to get a vaccine in America, and it's, you know, it's our duty to get it, and that it should be mandatory and people should be punished. Like, those are the people who we should be shaming and should be canceling. You know, the Yale study and these other studies have shown that they're trying to think of how to get the messaging right so that they can convince you and I and our friends and family to take these vaccines. And part of their strategy is shaming people. But these are the people, I mean, I don't really believe in shame as a tactic, but I'm just saying, if we're going to be shaming anybody, it's the people like this who are in positions of power or influence who think that it's okay that they can just get away with floating these kinds of ideas. I really think we need to make an effort to call that out. I mean, I think it's great when people are calling out. I'm not saying threaten anybody or use violence against them or anything like that, but just calling them out. That's why, for me as a journalist, I like confronting people, putting a camera in their face, asking them the hard questions, because most of these people, and I guarantee you, Scott Morrison is one of these people, they're used to living in a bubble where everybody kisses their ass and nobody ever asks them a hard question. And that's how, as the journalist, and I've seen this firsthand, the journalists get asked to come back because they just throw softball questions. They never actually challenge the people because they want to be invited to the dinners and the galas and the special banquet dinners and all that kind of crap, because they're just trying to be a part of that in crowd. And that's what politics is basically about, you know. And so these are the people, though. My point with that little rant was that we need to be shaming and exposing and calling these people out for the fact that they even think it's okay to float these ideas. And look, I know that there's some differences in the cultures between the United States and Australia, but I don't give a shit about constitutions, guys. I don't care what your constitution says, no matter what part of the planet you're from. The governments do not own your body. They do not own you, and you are a free, powerful, beautiful human being capable of organizing your own lives. You don't need them to tell you what to do. All right, Scott Morrison announced a deal with UK-based pharmaceutical company AstraZeneca, stating that Australians would be among the first to have access to COVID-19 vaccines. He said the government would work to spread the vaccine as widely as possible. The medical grounds should be the only reason for exemption. Quote, what is important to understand with any of these vaccines is it does protect you, but it also protects the community. And as is the case with any vaccine, there will be some individuals who, for precise medical reasons, can have issues. They and their safety and health depends on vaccine take up more broadly in the community. That's how they get protected. So again, this is the idea. They always say that we need everybody to get vaccinated. That's how we create a herd immunity, but it's not a natural herd immunity that many of us have been calling for. It's some attempted herd immunity through vaccines. So my point here, we don't even need to go any further. Just the fact that this guy thinks it's okay to float that idea. Insane. Now I'm going to take you to this next piece here written by my friend Jeffrey Tucker, called Madness in Melbourne. And, you know, I will link these videos, these articles as well. But I just want to go through that. He starts describing some of the things that are happening in Melbourne. And I did a list like this as well for the world at large. But this is crazy because this is just in Melbourne. Police may now enter someone's home without a warrant. Curfews are 8 p.m., $1,600 fine if outside without a valid reason. Can't visit family or friends, $200 fine for no mask, mandatory masks at all times. And let me just point this out. This article was written, let's see, about 2.5 weeks ago. So the situation may have changed since he wrote this, and I hope you guys will correct me if I'm wrong. But even if these things have stopped, the fact that these things have happened under the coronavirus pandemic is something we need to pay attention to, because we know governments are always going to push for more power, and rarely will they relinquish that power unless the people, stand up and make it clear, no, we're not going to put up with that. You can only exercise once per day for up to 1 hour. Only one person per household per day can leave the house. Can't go more than 3 miles from your home. I have seen that. Weddings being illegal, no gatherings of any size, armies on the street, finding, arresting people. They also have this quote from Victoria. Since March 21st, a total of 190,740 spot checks have been conducted by police. We're going to talk about that, the Victoria Police, in just a moment. Protests and activism are illegal. Media being extremely biased, calling any protesters right-wing conspiracy nut jobs. And that's pretty typical all around the world, unfortunately. Australia won't say how many fines they've given out, but an ABC News report says it's over $5 million. Streets of Melbourne empty, billboards outside say in capital letters, "What are you doing? Stay home." Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews shows complete and utter disdain for us, constantly blaming us. He's blamed children for not taking this seriously enough. And they also talk about, again, Scott Morrison encouraging lockdowns. 1984 billboard language, staying apart keeps us together. And this is because of 147 dead people in Victoria. Again, this was 2 weeks ago. The number may have changed, but clearly it's not a high number, and that's not disrespect to anybody who may have lost their life in Melbourne. It's insane is what this is. And now let's look at Victoria here. Another one, Victoria Police charge woman who was filmed. Now, of course, the Guardian shills for the cops. Allegedly, there's a video. This woman's being choked by a cop on the ground for not wearing a mask, I believe it was, or for not social distancing. This was August 11th. Victoria Police have arrested and charged a young woman in Melbourne who was captured on video allegedly being choked and pinned to the ground by a police officer. In the video footage posted on social media, the woman, who was subsequently found to have an exemption for wearing a face mask. I mean, after all that, she's got a freaking exemption, right? She wasn't even trying to be a rule breaker. So we'll just show the video here. But basically, this woman is getting attacked by a cop for not wearing a mask, thrown to the ground, choked. And you see how they say allegedly on there? They're just so full of shit. That's what they call objective journalism, allegedly, because we don't know. It hasn't happened. Well, clearly, we all have eyes. This woman's being choked by a cop for not wearing a mask. And look, she's kicking back. At least she's got some freaking guts and some courage to kick back. Get the fuck off me is what I'm sorry. I'm going to chill out. But this stuff makes me so angry. Where are the freedom cells? Where are the organized people? Instead of just filming this happen, why don't people stop it from happening? And the crazy thing is, what I was saying with this whole article here, the whole point of this story, is they arrested her and charged her. You see this woman being manhandled by this freaking tyrannical slave, this freaking order follower right here, because that's what they are. That's the big problem that we have. That's the main problem, is authority, the blind worship and belief in authority. You see that guy? Oh, apparently that guy was being abused. And so the woman has been arrested and charged. You know what she's being charged with? With assault on an officer. So, the onlooker in the video is saying you are choking her. She's got an excuse for not wearing a mask. She went to the doctor yesterday. The arrest has been reviewed by the cops and blah, blah, blah. We made the decision to arrest the woman after she failed to provide her name and address. And that's the thing is, okay, we're already living in a society, particularly here in Australia and definitely in the US, where if you don't just hand over your name, all of a sudden that makes you a suspicious person. We are supposed to have the constitutionally God-given natural right to just travel and to exist without being accosted and harassed everywhere we go. And if we don't comply and just give them the information they want when they demand it, then all of a sudden we're suspicious. Next thing you know, you're getting choked and thrown on the ground, and you're thinking, okay, that was insane. I survived that. I'm thankful. But we got that all on video. We're going to bring these cops down. Nope. The next thing you find out, you're getting arrested and you're being charged. You see this? Victoria Police charge woman who is filmed. That woman right there on the ground right now with the freaking, this idiot on top of her, charged. And let's continue. We got this. I'm not going to play the whole video, but there's definitely a few key points here I want to get to, guys. This video is 6 minutes long. We're going to play a few of this. I'm going to shut up. This one, I think you have to hear. Please, if you're watching this right now, this is extremely important. Listen to what this police officer thug is saying. This is, again, in Victoria, describing smashing people's car windows over non-compliance, for not giving them their information as part of contact tracing, for not blindly just listening to the orders. They've talked about roving cops going around the city. They talk about checkpoints, smashing people's windows, cops making sure people are in the proper places. This is insane. Check this out.
commitment that we have at the moment. It's the most important commitment for Victoria Police, and that is enforcing the Chief Health Officer guidelines. I just want to recap really briefly on what we're already doing, because we have a significant commitment. We have Operation Sentinel, which is every day 500 police officers out and about, tasking, checking populous places, knocking on doors, a whole range of things. We have Operation Sentinel 2, which is the vehicle checkpoints, 8 vehicle checkpoints right around the restricted area, those permanent ones where we're checking the access and egress right throughout the state. We have Operation Shielding, 160 transit police officers, transit protective services officers, I should say, and 80 police officers from transit who are out there every day, and they're making sure that there's public assurance. They're checking who should be in proper areas, and they're enforcing as you would expect them to be doing so. In addition to that, we have Operation Ribbon as well, which is our family violence operation. So there's a whole range of different areas, including Operation Sateria, where we're helping enforcement at quarantine hotels. All up, we're seeing every day upwards of around 1,500 police and PSOs out there enforcing as they should be. I've committed an extra 250 police and PSOs now to that already significant number. And on a daily basis, they will be enforcing throughout the day, but importantly of a night time as well. We will have now, because of the curfew, we'll have significant police and PSOs out there, not just in vehicles and doing if you like, static checks, but we'll have vehicle checkpoints where we'll set them up at random places and keep rolling them around Melbourne. So the potential, the opportunity for someone to be detected who isn't supposed to be out and about is significant. Every police officer right throughout our organisation in any patrol car has a responsibility for COVID-19 enforcement, and that's what they'll be doing. Every one of them will be making sure that we're enforcing these new guidelines, these restricted guidelines. The curfew is obviously significant because we expect to see much reduced movement right around the state. In terms of discretion, which is a word we've heard a lot, we did give them a period of discretion there when we moved to masks and other restrictions. That period of discretion is, I've said it before, it's virtually closed. Of course, we can't be prescriptive for every circumstance, but it will only be in an exceptional circumstance. In an exceptional circumstance that Victoria Police will be using discretion, because we just have to stop this movement. We have to enforce the CHO guidelines. The vast majority of people are doing the right thing, and for those who are, I thank you, but there is still a minority who aren't. We've given out a significant range of infringements, as the Minister has outlined, 161 last night. 60 of those were for for not wearing masks. And from our perspective, though, the people, the vast majority who are doing the right thing, need to understand for those who aren't, there is a consequence. And there are consequences, and I want to be really clear on that. In the last week, we've seen a trend, an emergence, if you like, of groups of people, small groups, but nonetheless concerning groups who classify themselves as sovereign citizens, whatever that might mean, people who don't think the law applies to them. We've seen them at checkpoints, baiting police, not providing their name and address. On at least 3 or 4 occasions in the past week, we've had to smash the windows of people in cars and pull them out of there so they could provide their details, because they weren't telling us where they were going. They weren't adhering to the Chief Health Officer guidelines. They weren't providing their name and their address. We don't want to be doing that, but people have to absolutely understand there are consequences for your actions, and if you're not doing the right thing, we will not hesitate to issue infringements, to arrest you, to detain you where it's appropriate. As I say, it's not something we want to be doing, but it is what we will do, and it has been occurring the last week. And particularly one incident, if I like to highlight the type of challenges that we're experiencing. Last night, a 26-year-old policewoman was on patrol with another partner down in the Frankston area near the Bayside Shopping Centre. During that time, they approached a 38-year-old woman who wasn't wearing a mask. After a confrontation and being assaulted by that woman.
All right. I think you guys get the point there. I'm just going to stop it right there. I mean, is that not insane? Everybody who just heard that, like listening to what he was describing going on there in Australia. We've already been through a few other examples. We're going to get to New Zealand now in just a moment. But just smashing people's windows, roving cars, checkpoints, curfews, basically smashing people's windows because they didn't want to tell them where they were going, where they live, who they've been with. Again, the contact tracing aspect. I mean, that is insane that is already happening to our brothers and sisters in Australia. Now we're going to move to New Zealand and talk a little bit about New Zealand. And then the final point I'm going to make as we start to wrap up is the commonality between these two places. And some of you might already be able to guess it. So this is, again, coming from Jeffrey Tucker. The other one was called Madness in Melbourne. This is Authoritarianism in Auckland. And he kind of does a similar story, just going through talking about some of the insanity happening in New Zealand and the limited cases. I mean, I know that they recently went back under lockdown after sort of being free of cases for, I think, several weeks, if not a couple of months, and people saying New Zealand did it. And then all of a sudden they get 4 deaths, and their leadership, their prime minister, what is her name? Jacinda Ardern. She decides they're going to lock down again, and things have gotten even more insane since that time. Well, actually, hold on. Let me stick back to Australia real quick. Sorry, I wanted to show you guys this one just so you see an example. But this, I talked about this months ago. This is way back in May when we saw these cops over in Sydney, different part of Australia, arresting this mom who was out like with protesters who were protesting the lockdown. And they just focus on this mom, and she's there with her child. She literally has her child in her hands as these cops are arresting her, and they rip like the baby out of her hands. He's yelling like, "Mommy's not going, leave mommy alone." I mean, it's pretty disturbing to watch this thing. And I remember when this happened, this is back in May, it was just to me a big sign of like, holy crap, what is going on? So that's back in May. Here we are in August, and these other things that we just discussed are happening in across Australia. So in New Zealand, though, they're starting to face similar circumstances. Arden explained that New Zealand could avoid future COVID-19 lockdowns ahead of alert level decisions. So she's the one who's behind these decisions, making this case that they're in a critical position. Unless they lock down, then things are going to get worse, to the point now that we have military staff guarding and being involved in quarantine facilities. They're strengthening border defenses amid criticism of quarantine management, and still no sign of how the virus entered the country. So they're like, we're serious about stopping this virus. We are not going to let it spread any further. So they decided that they were going to start opening up quarantine centers. Let me open up my link. Quarantine centers, quarantine facilities ahead of trying to get ahead of the virus, COVID-19. That's where we're at. They're already starting to say that they're going to put people in facilities to keep them separated from their families if they show that they're positive with COVID-19. And again, many of us don't trust these tests that they're using, and I don't trust their numbers. And we've gone over this channel, good reasons why you should be skeptical of their numbers. But despite that, they get 4 cases, they lock things down. Now they're saying anybody who's shown signs of this is going to be sent to quarantine facilities. They're getting the military staff involved in this. And this is all the while that New Zealand court recently ruled that part of the early coronavirus lockdown was illegal. A New Zealand court recently found for the first time that the first 9 days of a hard lockdown put in place by the government earlier this year, requiring people to isolate at home, was justified but unlawful, whatever the heck that means. The ruling comes after a lawyer, Andrew Borrowdale, challenged the legality of steps taken in the early stages of the 5-week lockdown, including calls for Prime Minister and other officials between March 26th and April 23rd, telling New Zealanders to stay at home. The order imposing stay-at-home restrictions was not passed until April 3rd, so it says New Zealanders' rights and freedoms were unlawfully limited for those first 9 days. While there is no question that the requirement was necessary, according to them, reasonable, proportionate response, the requirement was not prescribed by law. Now, will anything happen? Will anybody lose their job for that, or any changes? Of course not. I mean, that's just, this sort of thing happens all the time, and nobody pays for it. But guess what? Unfortunately, what we're seeing happen in New Zealand, the call for quarantine centers, these mass lockdowns over just a few deaths, and other mass restrictions similar to what we're seeing in Australia, people's children being taken away from them, being assaulted by officers, all the different lockdown things we talked about, curfews, and just fining people, and all this stuff that's starting to spread, and the talk of mandatory vaccines. When you see it in the mainstream reporting, look at this Bloomberg a couple days ago. Forced isolation may be the only way to stop the resurgence of the virus. And they go on to congratulate how great Australia, Japan, and New Zealand and others have done, but they've talked about how they've done it by locking down, and this is probably going to be the only way. See right here, faced with a new cluster this week after 102 days without a locally transmitted case, New Zealand has quickly enacted this strategy, placing around 30 people including 2 children below the age of 10 years old, into a centralized quarantine. So, there's nothing like, oh, talk of civil liberties. Is that legal? Is that okay? Do you guys care? Is that freaky? Just throw that in there. 2 of them were under 10 years old, and they're all being quarantined, maybe with their family. We don't know any details. This is just crap journalism, but that's how it's being reported in the mainstream. They're talking about it like this is a good strategy and this is something we need to do. When I saw a New York Times article that was talking about New Zealand and Australia, and they talk about the cases and they talk about the lockdowns and they talk about whatever success they believe they're having, but they don't mention anything about people's windows being smashed or all the crazy things that we're covering here. I mean, it's a completely biased reporting coming out of the mainstream. I know, big surprise. Now, the final point I want to make as we wrap up this is the two things, or the one thing that really unites these two countries in this specific instance, is the fact that they both have weak gun laws. Now, I'm not really a quote unquote gun nut. I do and have enjoyed shooting guns to just shoot a gun and learn how to use it and learn how to use it in my defense if I ever need to and feel comfortable handling it. But technically, I'm a felon in the United States. I can't even legally own a gun. So it's not really a big part of my culture, but I absolutely understand that guns can and have in the past play a role in defending yourself. I don't know if we have enough guns and enough people to overthrow the government or something like that, if that was the strategy you wanted to choose. But either way, I know that governments in countries that have very limited gun rights seem to be more willing to push things in a way that sometimes they haven't quite yet in the United States. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen in the United States. I clearly believe it's going to happen in the United States. And I also think that despite all the guns, there's going to be a lot of people who won't stand up either way. But I did want to make note of this, that the gun laws of New Zealand have been changed a few different times. They're called the Arms Act of 1983. There were amendments in 1990 after the Aramona massacre, and then in 2019 again after the Christchurch shooting, which many people are very skeptical of what happened in that shooting. So about 300,000 people own and use New Zealand's firearms. So some people do own guns. Gun licenses are issued, though, by the police. So at the discretion of the police, which does not sound like a good idea to me, provided that the person is in good standing and without criminal, psychiatric, or drug issues. Now, that clearly, to me, here in the United States could be easily used against you. Think about this in combination with social credit scores, and they go ahead and scan your name, your social media platforms, and they see, well, look at this crazy things they're talking about. Look at all this crazy stuff they believe in. They're clearly not psychologically well. There's no way we can give them a gun. I mean, that's got clear signs of abuse that I'm sure have been abused, and I'm sure that I have heard from people in countries like this that have these restrictions. Not to say that there should be no restrictions or anything on guns. Not to, I don't want to get in that whole conversation. I just want us to point to this for a moment. And again, recently, New Zealand just 2 months ago tightens gun laws in response to mass shooting. So there's kind of been a progressive tightening of gun laws and prohibitions after massacres, and I'll let you decide whether or not you think those massacres were whatever. Now, with Australia, this is interesting. The BBC saying, are Australia's gun laws the solution for the U.S.? So we can clearly see they're trying to push the idea that maybe the U.S. needs to give up their guns and things of that sort. But it's a similar thing where Australia does have restrictions on guns. They have 28 waiting day periods, thorough background checks, and a requirement to present a, quote, justifiable reason to own a gun. Unlike in the U.S., self-protection is not accepted as a justifiable reason to own a gun. So you can't say, well, I just want to protect my family in case some crazy person comes in my house. I live in a city, there's a high crime rate. I'm going to put it up in a gun safe, and my children are going to have no access to it, but I think this could be useful. We've learned how to use it. We've practiced with it. If it ever comes down to it, we're prepared to protect ourselves. Nope, not a good enough reason. Can't own a gun. So I don't think that's a coincidence that these two nations do not have very strong gun rights, if you will. And I don't think that the government has the right to tell you what you can do with your body, much less what you can own. Now, I'm not going to get into a debate about whether or not people should have access to tanks or something like that. But the point is, the people are able to protect and defend themselves against criminals, whether those criminals are common street criminals, criminals from the CPS, from the IRS, from the government, from whatever, coming to try to take you away, quarantine you, force vaccines on you or your children, break your car windows. To me, those are acts of violence, and that is aggressing upon me as a free person. I don't care if you have a shiny badge on or a special title next to your name. If you come at me that way, I'm going to do whatever is necessary to protect myself. And I think most of us believe that way and feel that way and need to live that way. So I'm going to wrap up now. I will check a few comments as we wrap up. If there are any Aussies or new, Kiwis who want to throw in some comments, please go ahead and do so now. I'd love for you guys to share your direct experience of what's going on out there, because I mean, this shit is crazy to me. I mean, it's insane to me that we're at the point where these things are openly happening. And like I was kind of mentioning, most Americans are not aware of these things, or they think they're justified. I mean, let me just share this with my Australian brothers and sisters for a moment. I told you guys last week I had posted a picture of myself without a mask on, me and my partner without a mask on at the store, and we were getting death threats and getting attacked and all kinds of things. And when I was trying to explain to people why I'm concerned about masks, namely that I think this is a progressive step toward mandating vaccines and towards generally controlling our lives in new and unprecedented, dangerous ways, these people were like, "Oh, you're such a conspiracy theorist. That's conspiracy theorist. That's not going to happen." And I said, "Oh, hey, look what's happening in Australia. Listen to this cop talk about smashing people's windows." And their response was, "So what are you, like, obsessed with Australia? What do you care about what's happening to Australia?" And it was just so mind-numbing to me, because I do care about what's happening in Australia. I have friends and people that I consider close friends in Australia. And even if I didn't, there are other human beings over there, and we are connected in this human family that are dealing with this crazy shit. And we need to help each other see that. We need our family and friends in the United States to see that our distant relatives in Australia and New Zealand are dealing with some tyrannical governments, and that could potentially come here. That's why it matters. So I really hope all of you guys will take the time to share this video out, if you don't mind, and just help get this information out there, because it's really important. And I wanted to make sure to do this video. Most of the times I do focus on the United States politics because that's where I'm from, but I do have an international audience, and I appreciate all of you. I have people send me information from South Africa. We're probably going to debut a new documentary soon from a supporter from Germany who sent me a documentary about the big ass protest, the hundreds of thousands of people in Germany that were protesting against the lockdowns. We have contributors here on this channel from India. We have Freedom Cell members, the mindful militants that are in Melbourne and Australia. So this is a global community, and I want us to be able to share our stories with each other. Please, contact me if there's a way I can help you get your story about what's going on where you live. I live in Houston right now. I'm headed to Mexico, and I'll report on what's going on in Mexico. But if you have a story to share from your area, wherever it's at, please do contact me. The email is intothelight@protonmail.com. Intothelight@protonmail.com. We're going to leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for the support. I appreciate it. Like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until next time, let's keep working together. Let's keep trying to overcome, empower ourselves, and spread awareness about this tyranny so that it doesn't come to all of our lives, and that we can shift the course of humanity, because that's what's at stake right now. I mean, I don't mean that with any sort of fear porn or trying to be dramatic here. This, I truly believe, is why we are all here. This is why we're all connecting right now in this moment through this broadcast, because we care about what's going on. We care about the direction of humanity. We care about the future generations, the 7 generations and beyond. And we are seeing things happen that we know if they go through, it might be difficult to turn things around. This is our moment. This is why we are here. This is the reason that we have all connected, so that we can use our individual lives to try to change this shit. Because if we don't, the world is going to go in a dark direction, make no mistake. And it might take a couple generations before we can turn it around. There will be individual pockets of freedom and liberty, and I plan to be in one of those where we can thrive. But I would love it if we can prevent this whole thing from happening, so we don't have to watch our brothers and sisters and family and friends who didn't listen, watch them suffer under this tyranny. Because make no mistake, we are fighting for the people who think we are crazy, the people who think that we're just conspiracy theorists and we're paranoid and buying into fear porn, and we just need to worry about the virus. Even those people, as frustrating as they can be, those are the people we're fighting for. Don't forget that, guys. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.